So Kent Hoeg is a senior manager with the Computing and Communication Services, or CCS, which is university's central IT department. His current portfolio includes CCS's business operations, software management, digital innovations, and the university's PMO, or project management office. Kent set up the university's PMO in 2018 to record and track all IT projects within the university. Typically, he monitors over 100 active projects. Kent also leads the project resources, so that's project managers, business analysts, and organizational change managers for large, very large scale IT projects. He employs anywhere from 8 to 12 project managers at any given time. So if you guys can welcome Kent to the stage.
All right. So I want to put a little bit of context into kind of the purpose of what I'm trying to talk about. And it's what I look for in a project manager. Now, I fully acknowledge that most of you don't want a career as a project manager. You're in other disciplines. But I'm here to tell you that each and every one of you will be doing projects at some point in time. So you're grad students, PhD students, so use your critical thinking to take what I tell you and push it towards your discipline and what you might do or your experiences within projects. That's a little bit about my agenda. I'll talk a little bit about why you should listen to me, and then progressively talk about what I look for in a project manager. I say over 40 years in information technology. That's not to tell you that I'm old. It is to hopefully tell you I have some experience. And my experience is in IT. Again, that doesn't matter. You can project manage anything. But my experience is in IT. So in 40 years, I've seen quite a lot of change. So I am adaptable. So my hope is you'll understand. I may be old, but I still understand kind of the current critical thinking and the current thinking about project management and so on. I have managed project managers for over 25 years, so it has been a big part of my career. I have been at this university for 18 years. I didn't get hired to be a project manager. I got hired for different areas within IT, and I have managed virtually every aspect of IT. I've managed infrastructure side, application side, people side, and so on. But I have hired a lot of project managers, 40 or 50 while I've been here, and maybe that's low. I've been in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of interviews. I also set up the PMO. So hopefully you get an impression that I know a little bit about project management and what one looks for in project management. I am certified, big deal. I have the experience behind it. Probably the most important thing of why you should listen to me is part of my role really involves talking to people. I talk to people across the entire university organization, right from the board of governors and through every level into the organization, and especially those end users and stakeholders. And I hear a lot about what they want, what's important to them. So I think, or I hope I have enough experience that I can help you understand maybe what you could adjust yourself to when trying to do project management or looking for a job that has a project management component. Here's the basics, what I look for in every project manager. This is the simple stuff. I look for just those that understand basic principles of project management. They understand what type of ways in which you could do project management. And I don't care that you understand what waterfall or agile is. I don't really care if you know any of the stuff that's on this slide right now, because it's all trainable. You can get taught that. That's the mechanics. But it's important to have. It's important that you understand kind of the formality of project management. It's important that you understand project management is a repeatable process. You keep fine-tuning it. You learn from your previous mistakes and you do better and better every time you do projects. Project management is also built in transparency. And by that is like, is the project on track? If you're effective project manager, you're not hiding things, sliding things under the carpet to say things are all hunky-dory, and then a week before your project is supposed to be finished, you say, oops, I have scope creep, or I have other things, we didn't meet our deadlines, and so on. Built-in transparency. And good project management has good governance, good decision-making. How do we make decisions? So all of these things are what I look for. So when I hire somebody, I need to see they have those standard skill sets. Importantly, I also look that they can evangelize what they're talking about. They're passionate about success of projects and what makes projects successful. So going beyond the basics, and Mike covered this a bit, it's the people side. I look for project managers who know how to work with people. That's the important thing. I use those kind of words that we all use. Are they collaborative? Do they listen? Do they have empathy? Are they inclusive? But that is important. So when I'm sitting in an interview, I listen for that. Do they give me examples of how they collaborated with others? How they were willing to change direction, not do it the way they thought was right, but looked at consensus building and leading a team in that manner. Team player. Project managers, you can be a project manager and you can be very controlling and very dictatorial. And there are some disciplines where that's okay. Insurance companies, they pretty much, because of regulations and so on, they expect you to do this, 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 and this. That's fine. In a university setting where we are here, that is not going to fly. That is not the way we operate. We operate in teams. We look for collaboration and we look for successes of individuals who can help lead that and help guide that. Mike said this, you need to be a project manager. You need to be able to take all your tasks and make sure they're getting done, and all your team's tasks, make sure they're getting done. But it's the team, it's people side of the house. That's what makes effective project managers. And when I'm in an interview, I'm listening for that. I am listening to see, are they indeed talking about this is a success for the team? If the saying is typically, my team gets all the glory for successes. I'll take all the credit for things that fail. Right? You want to be able to support your team. And a good project manager understands the skill sets of their team. You're not always going to get the right players you want, but a good project manager is going to say, what are your passions? What are your skill sets? How do we leverage that into the project that we're doing? So keep that in mind. Relationship builder, back to people skills. And it's not just about building relationships with your project team. You need to build relationships with your project sponsor. You need to build relationships with your stakeholders, those that are impacted by whatever project and change you are doing. You need to build those relationships. And that also even goes with vendors. If you're working with external folks, how do you build relationships with them? What makes them succeed, which will allow them to help you more? Transparency, communicative. Again, I look for that in the interviews that I do. I also look for problem solving. We often ask questions in interviews. Tell me about a problem that happened in your work experience. What's important is I don't want to hear just about the problem. I don't want to hear about the fact, well, I went to my boss and we talked about the resolution. I want to hear about the way in which they solved that problem. Who did they talk to? What actions did they take? How did they ensure buy-in to solving that problem to get everybody on board? So when you're in interviews, or what I would offer that you need to enhance your skill sets is around problem solving. And how do I do that in an effective manner? I talk about celebrating the wins and acknowledging the challenges. Projects always have challenges, usually more so than anything else. And as a good leader, as a good project manager, I'm there to rally behind the truth. I'm there to say, this is a tough time we're going into right now. We're all overworked. We're all going to spend a little bit more time in the next while to solve this and get this through. But I'm there with you. I'm going to be there. Some of the things I do as a manager is just, hey, my team is working hard. Bring them a box of donuts or coffee or whatever. Food always talks. But help them understand you appreciate. Help them understand these tough times. You've heard from Mike and myself, leverage your past lessons learned. And again, I always have a question in my interviews about that. I want to understand how you take previous, often mistakes, and mistakes are a good thing, it's okay. I ask, how do you leverage that into the next time? So be prepared in interviews to be almost proud of the fact I made this huge mistake, but this is what I've learned from it. And this is how I take that learning for all future projects. That's what I listen. The other thing that's maybe not intuitive, but I look for in people I hire is, what else do they do? What else are they willing to do besides the actual job of project management? And I wrote down here, they're willing to be on United Way campaign, or they're willing to lead some sort of committees or be part of committees. Culture is so important in a project. And when I hire project managers, I'm hiring them not only to manage projects, but to be part of the bigger picture. In my case, CCS, Computing and Communication Services. And it's not just about the work, it's about the team and how do we all hopefully get along together. When I see people put up their hand and says, I'm willing to take this one event and run with it and get the rest of the people involved, I look for that because it shows a culture. And I want you to, and they use the word fit. I want you to fit into the culture. I want your culture to fit into CCS. So I'm telling you, you're not going to be happy unless you feel a good connection with your employer and your employer feels a good connection with you. That's when you start to have a much happier relationship within your work environment. The final thing I'll say about kind of going beyond the basics is, if you're going in for an interview, research your company. I have so many interviews where the individual comes in and they know zero about the university. They don't even know the universities are collaborative in nature. They've never been to the website, or they've only done a cursory view. I've had others come in and say, you know, I was reading the strategic plan of the university and it said this, this, and this. That really aligns well with me. And here's why, but here's what I would do to help. That's how I get impressed by the interviews that I'm in. Well, let's talk about going even beyond that. So we've got the basics. Everybody can learn project management. Then good people skills and a good fit into the organization, a good culture. I look for well-roundedness. And in my particular case, because I hire full-time project managers, I realize and recognize that may not be your where you're heading towards. But what I do is also hire for other skill sets. You must be a good project manager. I want you to be a good business analyst. I want you to be a good change manager. And by change manager, it's OCM, organizational change manager, which is people side of the house. I want you to have all those skill sets. I definitely look for certifications. That doesn't have to be your bag, but what I want to hear is not only do I know how to project manage, but you know what? I understand all my projects have an impact to people. And this is how I handle it through good change management practices. A lot of my folks work on a project or work on a project proposal, They do a lot of requirements gathering. They do business analysis to figure all this stuff out. They're doing it on behalf of another department on campus. So what happens? Well, the person who did all that, my business analyst, hopefully did a good job. And what happens 9 times out of 10, my project sponsor out there who says, this is what I want, they come back and say, I know he's a business analyst, or she's a business analyst. I want that person to do the project management because I'm so confident. So if you've got a lot of skill sets and your transferable skill sets, it's really going to help you. And it goes beyond project management, change management, even other things. How well do you understand your department? How well do you understand other departments on campus? How well do you understand even finance? You're going to do budgets in whatever work that you do. You're going to work with numbers. So start to get comfortable with that. Start honing your skill sets. And I'm not talking about you have to go out there and get certifications in any of these, but you need to be well-rounded. You need to be able to explain to your potential employer, these are the sort of things I bring. I have other skill sets which are transferable to the job I'm applying for. Always learn your audience. The terminology is elevator pitches. I got to be able to convince you within a minute why my project is important, why I should get the funding for this, competing against all the others. Have that 1-minute speech ready with passion. Also, this one here is know the technology of the project. Again, I'm an IT project manager or manage IT project managers. It helps a lot if they understand what they are implementing. So if I hire a project manager to implement a new system, the more they know about that system, the better. In your cases, it might be within the farming technology. How well do you know it? If I know you're not just considering task A, B, C, but you understand the impact and how that technology is going to be used, I like it better. It's what I look for. Strong vendor management. Again, you're going to deal with the third parties. I want to hear that you have had the skill sets, experience, or at least knowledge on how to do that. It isn't all about, I must do exactly the way this vendor tells me to do it. I'm going to develop what's called an SOW, or a statement of work. And it's going to clearly define my expectations of that vendor. Here's what you're going to do. So as an interviewee, as I'm trying to get a job and I'm looking at this person interviewing me, I want to give them confidence that I can not only manage people, I can also manage the third parties. Keep that in mind as you're working along your projects. The other thing that makes it very valuable is when I understand that you're able to network, build a network, go out throughout the organization, use champions. So I'm one person, I can evangelize my project. But if I can convince you all of how important that is, and you all go out there and start saying, what an important project, now I have a better chance of success. I'm getting buy-in from multiple people, multiple groups. So use champions, find those out there that would be finding a benefit for what you're doing on your project, leverage them, get them to speak out. The other one is executive sponsor. So you got somebody at the top who's making these decisions. We're going to do this project and I'm going to support them. Leverage them. One thing that derails a project is when the executive sponsor is really gung-ho in the first and fights really hard to get this project going, and then they step out. That's not what you want to do as a project manager. You want to make sure that the project sponsor sends out regular emails of encouragement to the project team. You want to make sure the executive sponsor talks to stakeholders and continues to always keep that project at the forefront of why it's important. And they're way above my grade level, but I still manage them to do these things. I spoon feed them. I may write the communication, but I ask them to send it because it means more to come from the project sponsor than it does from me. So use those skill sets. And finally, to convince me that you are the whole package when I'm hiring somebody, that you have these other disciplines or knowledges, whether it's finance or change management or other. I also want to understand that, you know what, I know projects aren't going to go great. I know some projects will fail, or at least will have challenges. And I've seen it, I've experienced it. Well, this is what I do about it. So this is how I mitigate. This is how I hopefully think about potential risks ahead of the project. And I already start to put in place, how can I mitigate challenges that may come up? Don't wait till they do come up, but may come up. And good project management methodology help you in that, because it helps you identify risks and challenges up front. So you start to think about it. So this slide is really about organizational change management. And there is a framework for that. I am a certified change practitioner. That's not that hard. It took me 1 week. So it's not that it's a big deal. But the learning I got from that was a big deal. It changes my mindset about organizational change management. It teaches me a process, and they call it the ADKAR model, but it teaches me a process to help me articulate, why are we doing this change? It also helps me understand the stakeholders or the users I'm going to impact. You'll always hear what's in it for me. I always have to convince our end users what's in it for them. They don't even care all the time that it's good for the organization. Hey, this is great for the university. Yeah, but it's going to create a lot more work for me. That's not what they want to hear. If it's reality, you explain that. But you want to talk about, how is this project going to help them? And you will get more buy-in from them. You also have to have the knowledge of how to change. And what that means is you've got to understand your end users. You do things like what's called a stakeholder analysis. Okay, I talk about this person here. They are an influencer to the project. You know, they may not influence the actual project, but they have influence with senior management. So I need to understand and work with them so they understand the value. So it's knowing your end user audience, your stakeholders, your senior management, and learning what resistance might they give, how can I help them overcome it? Then there's always the training. Any change, you got lots of training. How am I going to train these people? How am I going to document it? And how am I going to communicate it? And what way am I going to communicate? There's an adage, it takes 7 times the communication 7 times to finally sink into your head. So how am I going to communicate it? Am I going to do it via email, workshops, one-on-one sessions? How am I going to do that? It's not the same for everyone, because everybody wants to hear messaging different. And reinforcing the changes, again, once the project is done, shouldn't be kind of wiping your hands and saying, I'm done. How do you sustain that change? How do you sustain what you try to accomplish on the long term? And you need mechanisms in place. So hopefully by doing good change management, you've handled the resistance. You understand that, hey, leadership can sink a project real fast. The research would indicate that it is very good for the highest ranking officer in the organization, the president of the organization, come out there and say, this is a great project, let's go do it. But the research will tell you that's good, but your direct supervisor has the most impact on your ability to support this project. So make sure you understand leadership, especially the immediate leadership of the people who are working on the project or who are impacted by the project, and understand how to get them supportive of this. And culture. Culture, again, is very difficult. It's hard to change culture. That's why you have this ADKAR model. That's why you have a process for change. It's so you can help people slightly change that, so at least acknowledge that culture. Fear is always, fear, uncertainty, and doubt about any change can always sink a project, so address it. And when I do interviews, I listen for that. I listen that they acknowledge that there's going to be fear in my project. And this is what I do to mitigate that. This is what I do to help that. And a lot of people don't support change. Again, what's in it for me? They don't understand what that change will do for them. The other thing that's important to know is some will get it. Some understand the change. They're supportive. Let's go do it. Others will say, I don't get it. I just don't understand why this is important. Why can't I do it the way I've done it? That's very effective. I can get my job done quick. Understand again. I listen for that in interviews. How do they overcome those sort of challenges? Project managers, again, the framework of project management is very repeatable. You do the same thing over and over again, and you learn how to be very effective at it. What I'm here to tell you is I don't want a project manager that's going to force that on everybody. You got to learn how to play the game. You've got to understand, you need to be a little bit flexible, because the people on your project or the people you're impacting, they're individuals. And you want to leverage their strengths and their abilities to help you. So it's okay that we have standards. Be willing to adapt those standards as a project manager. If I'm doing a 60-day project versus a 3-year project, you better believe I'm going to adapt all that documentation I need to do. I don't need the same level of documentation for smaller projects. I certainly don't go, and you asked the question over here about project managers that seem all nice, but all of a sudden they want to do it their way and they don't listen to me. Believe me, when I hire somebody, I really try to find out, is that the way they are? If they are, that's okay, but they go work for an insurance company. If they want to work for University of Guelph, you better not be that way. So always ask yourself, what don't I need to do within this project? That's just as important as what do I need to do with this project. We don't want to burden you for so much overhead that you spend more time doing the mechanics versus getting the accomplishments. Which I talked a little bit earlier about team charters. This is so important. And it changes for every project you're on. I highly encourage you to do this. And again, I listen for this in interviews. I listen for people who say, I really want to understand the team that I'm working with and how do we best work together. So I develop team charters. How will decisions be made within this team? How will we handle conflict within this team? Who might do what within this team? And so on. So be realistic. I don't know of any project I've been on where I get full-time team members, project teams. They're always working at the side of the desk while they have their day job. Recognize that. Be empathetic to that, sympathetic to that, and work with them and their supervisors. And sometimes it's working with a supervisor to help offload a bit of work. When I do large projects, I put a lot of money in there for what's called backfill. I want to pay that supervisor money to get somebody else temporarily to do some of that operational daytime work so I can pull off that member to be on part of the team. At least 30% of the time, 40, 50. I recognize it'll never be 100. Don't go in with that expectation because you'll never meet deadlines. You also have to realize people will get sick. People will leave the organization. They're on your project team. They're valued. How do you think about that? That's one of these risks you think about up front. What do I do about key individuals who might not be there for whatever reason? Maybe another project came along and the supervisor said, sorry, I need them over here now. That's a new priority. How do I continue my project? And I got to think about that all the time. Play into the politics. Sorry, there are politics in any job. Acknowledge it, recognize it, play into it. I'm not saying suck up to everyone, but I am saying acknowledge politics exist. I've had a lot of projects be approved that should not have been. There is no way that this is the right project for this moment in time, because these other ones that I believe would be more valuable to the organization for this, this, and this. But you know what? It was a pet peeve of the president. The president said, I want. Okay, that is a priority. We're going to do it. I'm not going to begrudge that. I'm going to accept that, and I'm going to work towards building success to get that project. So my hope is, in what I've talked about now, is you're going to, again, use your critical thinking skills about what little piece of project management you might do, whether you're a team member, project manager, or whatever else. And if you do what I'm suggesting when you're in an interview, you've got a much better chance of getting hired. Why? Because the organization knows you're always thinking about risk mitigation. They know you're always thinking about how can I make it better and how can I adapt to problems that come along. Obviously, you have better chance of success if you're able to explain to your prospective employer how you're there to make their business better. You're there so that they understand the projects that will come along, be aware of it, the benefits of that, the elevator speech. And you'll get better user acceptance if you do the things that I've talked about in the previous slides. For yourself, so what's in it for you? Your skill sets are going to be far improved. You're not just this focused on, I'll say, project management, but you know what? You have some finance acumen. You understand how to do budgets or expenses. You know how to do some change management. That's a benefit to you. Why? Because the last bullet point, you're more marketable. One of the things that is always a challenge as a manager. So when I hire somebody, I look for a certification, and you know that's kind of that bare bone basics they need to have, but they won't have everything. And I spend a lot of my budget money certifying them on other items. So if you're a good project manager, I will certify you in business analysis. Double-edged sword. I have spent a lot of money. Now they're more marketable. And of course, university doesn't pay great, so I'll go out into the private sector. I can't begrudge that. It was the right decision. My hope is I've hired people who fit into the culture of the department and of the university, that they understand the benefits of working there. Hey, I get my skills upgraded. What a great place to work. Not because I'm more marketable, but because it shows a culture of a great place to work. And again, for you, lessons learned, it's just through experience. You make mistakes, you learn from those lessons, and that will make you a better person, a better project manager, just a better employee. And again, what I said on the right there, show me you have great breadth and adaptability. Those are the sort of key things that will let me hire you. All right, that's the end of the presentation. I hope I get some questions like Mike did, because they were excellent questions.